Okay, I'm calling the Rapid City School District Board of Education meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Kate Thomas.
Here.
Gabe Doney.
Here.
Jim Hansen is coming in late with notice. Amy Palicki.
Here.
Clay Colomb.
Here.
Deb Baker.
Here.
Troy Carr.
Here.
All right, join us for the invocation from, let me get your name, Mr. Brock, correct? Randy Brock from Open Bible, please. All right, please, thank you. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, I need a motion for the approval of the agenda.
Motion.
And Troy. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, we have persons wishing to address the board. I do need a vote or a motion to have 3 minutes each, but extend the time for as many as there are out here, and we have 14 right now. Can I get a motion to extend that time? Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay. 3 minutes each. I may remind you of the guidelines. We have a lot of people who may not have read through what you signed. Issues that affect any individual or particular school should first be addressed at the building level. And then speakers should focus on the main points and not be repetitive. Personnel matters or complaints that directly or indirectly identify an employee shall not be discussed. To maintain a civil dialogue, threats and intimidation are not allowed. And I have my first speaker as Kate Linden, 3 minutes each. You can hand them over to one of the ladies over here.
Is this on? Oh, there it goes. Okay. I am here regarding the book called Fun Home, which is on the chopping block, and I'm here to support it. I am here to support that because it violates the South Dakota laws, the codified law, chapter 22 to 24, the obscenity and public indecency laws. Okay, so I'm going to just read some highlights. I'm giving you some of these things, and I ask if you have young children to please be considerate, and then you might want to leave just for a few minutes. Pages 2 and 3 of that handout is pages from the book. I'm happy to take them back when you're done looking at that. South Dakota Codified Law 22, 24, 29, possession, sale, or loan as disseminating material harmful to minors. The person is guilty of disseminating material harmful to minors if that person knowingly gives or makes available to a minor or promotes or possesses with intent to promote to minors any materials described in subdivisions 22, 24, 27, 4. I'm going to read that to you really quickly. Harmful to minors includes the meaning, the quality of materials, or any performance of any description or representation in whatever form of nudity, sexual conduct, sexual excitement. Okay. Section 7 goes on to describe the matter and materials as book or other pictorial representation. Section 8 describes a minor as somebody under the age of 18. Nudity is described within the meaning of subdivision 4, the showing of the human male or female genitals, pubic area. Okay. Section 11, obscene materials. The dominant theme of which, taken as a whole, appeals to the prurient. Do we even know what that means? Well, I'll tell you really quickly what it does mean. Prurient is marked by arousing or appealing to sexual desire. Okay, so it talks about the obscene materials. Prosecution under that publicly indicate that the material or matter is being commercially exploited by the defendant for the sake of the prurient appeal. Such evidence is probative with respect to the nature of the matter. Section 12, prurient interest. It appears from the character of the material, the circumstances of its dissemination, that the subject matter is designed for a specifically susceptible audience. We're talking about children and adolescents under the age of 18 with that in their school. So yes, it needs to be taken out. Sexual conduct under section 14 within the meaning of subdivision 4, subdivision 4 of the section. Any act, masturbation, homosexuality, sexual intercourse, physical contact with any person's clothed or unclothed.
Mrs. Linden,
Thank
that
you.
is time. I'm sorry, it goes so much shorter in the 3 minutes.
It does, and I appreciate that. I'm sure you guys don't want to hand on to that. The picture is 1,000 words. If you want to send it back to me, you're welcome to. The law is right there for you on page 1.
Yep. Okay. Timmy Bubrak. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong.
That's okay, everyone does. I'm Timmy Bubak. I'm a teacher in RCAS, an English teacher. Good evening, board. I'm really grateful to live in a society that demands free speech and free expression so that we can come and discuss concerns like the banning and destruction of student choice books in our school district. I am speaking of some of the same books on the surplus list that are labeled as to be destroyed. Okay, just for some context, the books in question are brand new books. They are not old or damaged, and they were purchased just last year for senior level only English language arts classes. They are a part of an English 12 library where our seniors could choose from various titles, up to over 30 titles. None of these books in question are mandated or required to be read by all of our seniors. This choice-based curriculum, as well as the book selections, were curated by a team of several English 12 teachers from all 3 high schools under the guidance of district curriculum leadership. These teachers use their vast content knowledge and professional judgment to select relevant materials, which were then approved by the instructional council. At the beginning of the year, they were removed from our classrooms. Destroying brand new books is unnecessary and arguably questionable in the eyes of United States case law. Banning books has been addressed by the courts time and time again, and through cases such as Board of Education versus PICO, Case versus Unified School District, and Counts versus Cedarville School District, among others that I emailed several to you, board, in your emails. Court precedent reveals that book banning infringes on the First Amendment rights of parents, teachers, and most importantly, our students' right to intellectual and academic freedom through the free exchange of ideas, as well as their right to free expression. According to case law, local school boards do not have the authority to remove books from student choice libraries because they object to the ideology or dislike the content. Banning and destroying these books could be seen as censorship of our First Amendment rights. If the books are not going to be offered to our English 12 seniors as student choice books, it is irrational to destroy brand new books rather than donate or sell them. I'm asking the board if you believe the content is not suitable for our 18-year-old students. Could you at least donate the books to local universities or libraries? While it has been previously argued based on case law precedent that the books perhaps should not be banned at all, there is certainly no reason to destroy them. I'd be happy to help them find a safe home. Please do not destroy the books. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn Hofler.
Sorry. Good evening. The book Fun Home and others were approved and purchased by someone because they were confirmed order of 34 copies of the book. And apparently it was to be used for a newly designed course in an English 12 class. Parents have a right to know what's in the book before it is removed. Fun Home is a graphic novel, and you have the copies there in front of you. I won't go into full detail of what the pictures show that you've seen. The pictures are graphic and depict two women performing oral sex, images of masturbation and drug usage. I do apologize if there are children, I'm sorry. There is a difference between teaching what sex is and teaching how to engage in it, and that's what's happening in this book. The Board of Education, the school board, and all Rapid City District employees are mandated by South Dakota Codified Law 13-33-6.1, where it talks about sexual abstinence, moral character development, self-respect, and respect for authority. Whoever was responsible for approving these books in the first place didn't follow that law, nor did they follow the South Dakota Codified Law 22-24-27 and 29, where it talks about obscenity laws and distributing sex content to minors. Whoever authorized these books to be put in the public schools in the first place, I just don't know what guidelines, what allowed this particular book to be put through the public K through 12 schools. The sex acts in this book are clearly pornographic, and it's why it's on the list to be removed, and I fully support the removal of any books depicting or describing sex acts or sexual situations. The person or persons responsible for bringing this book into the schools with the intention of assigning this book is, as required reading, need to be held accountable, and this needs to be under investigation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, Haywood Robinson.
Good evening. The question is of promises and optics. I'm Haywood Robinson, regular caller, avid listener. Today I'd like to briefly, thank Dr. Simon. She's not here, but in her absence I'd like this to be recorded. Then move to what the board has been saying and then doing, and briefly touch on how it seems to be aggravating situations. I want to thank Dr. Simon for her time here. I know it's not over yet, but I wanted her to know that if COVID hadn't interrupted, I think she would have been probably the best superintendent, sorry Katie, that we've seen in years. To think what might have been is really hard. We see that with the programs she instituted, she dramatically raised literacy rates, and she led a campaign that was just 4% away from improving our buildings and grounds on a level unheard of for over 50 years. It would have been amazing. To think of what could have been right now is mind-boggling. They could have been built. And what the cost would be to us today, astronomical, almost unreachable. Anyway, now on to what the board has said and what it does. You've said our facilities are sufficient, yet we sit here at an extra $10,000 extra because you simply couldn't make do. You say that there isn't money for salaries, and you've hired some people for upper admin at about $12,000 over the salary of prior hires, above the salary of a level 8 that is going to be discussed today, which is mind-boggling. You say that you're for constitutionality, yet you open meetings with an invocation. You say that you are for free speech, and yet you are literally discussing whether or not you should destroy books. I need you to stop setting small fires and get to the real work. We need superintendent. We need buildings and grounds and utilities that are going up. We can't keep cutting from teachers' salaries. Utilities costs and buildings and grounds are going up. We cannot keep cutting from salaries in order to make up the difference. We need a higher per student allocation, and we didn't know your plan to get it. Please stop listening to out-of-state voices. Your partners, your teachers, your real neighbors are pleading with you for solutions to staff, salary, and capital outlay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, Andrew Belsas.
Good evening, board. I'm here to speak on the books that appear on the surplus list on today's agenda. I understand it's not the board's decision to have them on there, and I will keep my points brief. I believe the books should be taken off the surplus list until more conversations between families, teachers, and administrators can be had. While some families find the material in these books too adult for their students, there are many families with students in English 12 classes who may want to examine the literary merit and voices these books hold. I believe these books should be options for these students and families on independent reading lists and literary circles, from which my understanding was their purpose. For students who want to examine Black and brown characters and authors, or read a book where the LGBTQIA+ community is represented, these books are incredibly meaningful. These are voices and viewpoints that are currently lacking in our literature lists. To recap, I believe these books have merit in our curriculum. I don't believe any student should be required to read them, but I think all students should have the option to read them. And if our district does decide to get rid of the books, I believe they should be sold to booksellers, as all other functioning books in surplus have been done in the past, or auctioned off instead of destroyed. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker, Ariel Pazorski. Let me know if I said that wrong.
It's Pazorski, and you're fine.
Okay.
So my name is Ariel Pazorski. I work at Central High School as an English teacher. I would like to speak to the books that are designated for destruction. Foremost, I was troubled that this was only an item buried on a surplus list rather than a separate item meant to invite public comment. I felt that this privileged the people who found these books offensive and wrote complaints while leaving out families who are against the book banning. This method gave the community little time, little information, and little access to use their voices in public discourse. I'm concerned that this action is in violation of our own district policy on controversial material. I have our policy here. It's District Code INB, subsection C, and it reads, "The student shall have the right to study any issue in accordance with their maturity, shall have the right to free access of all relevant materials, including those which circulate freely in the community." We have codified our students' rights to academic freedom, as we have previously acknowledged that freedom's value, and yet we are willing to violate our own policy based on the discomfort, I imagine, of select adults. I understand that there are families and individuals in this room that are concerned about the material presented to their children, and I believe that that concern comes from a place of wanting what is best for their children. But there are less drastic ways of helping these families. Just as we have policy that protects students' access to this content, we could have policy that asks that the content of books be transparent to families and offer secondary choices if needed. There are simple solutions that could better district practices while not restricting all teachers, all students, and all families. I ask that you politely remove these books' titles from your surplus list and allow for discussion of the titles at your next meeting. Or better, to trust the judgment of the professionals that work in the district as they continue to try to offer all students the best curriculum with the most choice possible. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Next speaker, Florence Thompson.
Thank you, Board. My name is Florence Thompson. I'm president of South Dakota Parents Involved in Education, and I'm also a retired school psychologist with over 40 years' experience in the schools. I have quite a long perspective on this. You know, we didn't used to have problems like this in the schools. Where's all this coming from? This is all across the country. I like to look at the big picture. The big picture is this is all across the country. This is all across the world. This is the Marxist global revolution. It's the cultural revolution. And this is what is coming into our schools. It is Marxist propaganda. It's designed to divide the kids from their parents, divide the kids from their country, divide the kids from their culture, and even in many cases divide them from their very selves. So it is very dangerous. And we need to start looking at this stuff with a broad perspective to see what is really happening. It's not this little issue. It's not this little book or this little school or this little district. This is all going on all over. And these books are not here by accident. They're bought in bunches. They're packaged on reading lists that are recommended. And our education system has been taken over to a large extent from the federal level. And so we're getting these books. And we need to start saying no at the local level. We're not going to do this to our kids. We're not going to do this to our community. They're made to be racially divisive. They're made to divide people against themselves, against their parents, against their churches. So we need to look at these with fresh eyes and not just be stampeded by the trend. So do think of that when you're voting on this. I do commend the board for considering this, and I hope that they will vote to support the getting rid of these books. And there are other books that will need to be looked at. But there's no law that says you have to have all this stuff in the schools. Let's just educate the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Natalie Slack.
Good evening, board. I'm Natalie Slack. I just want you to know that you're very special. And the only reason I'm telling you this is I don't know if anyone ever has. That's a life-giving line from Stephen Chbosky's award-winning and widely acclaimed book, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which was removed from the 12th grade English curriculum. Words have power. Words communicate intentions and integrity. The Perks of Being a Wallflower champions and celebrates inclusivity and tolerance by showing how people can blossom when they're accepted for who they are. Words are powerful. You might remove books from curriculum that you believe deal with complicated identities, family situations, global issues, sexual trauma, but that doesn't remove from your educational care students with complicated identities, family situations, issues, or trauma. In fact, students who do not see themselves represented within the curriculum are more likely to deal with depression, anxiety, isolation, and suicidal ideations. The destruction of books like The Perks of Being a Wallflower could actually be the destruction of lives of actual children in your care. If we say issues of teen suicide, drinking, drug use, sexual violence, sexual consent, gender, globalization, corruption, or mental health are inappropriate, we are telling the teens who may identify with these themes that they are inappropriate, that there is no safe space for them to reach out and ask questions or seek help. I hope that you'll look into the eyes of children who you are excluding from the power of words and of story. I hope you'll recognize that they are children, like your children, who deserve access to learning that prepares them for a big world of complicated ideas and ideologies and identities. And I hope you'll look inward and recognize the ways your lack of transparency and lack of clarity of intention leaves your integrity open to interpretation. Public education is meant to be expansive, never limiting. Instead, it should open minds to greater understanding. It should inspire innovation within the context and truth of history. Public education should never be a ceiling, but it should be a floor, grounding students in the ways of understanding and mechanisms of knowledge, a framework for a lifetime love of learning. Whether you try to stop them from seeing or not, the kids are watching. Your words have power, and you are complicit in the loss of lives of the kids from whom you strip away safe spaces and safe stories that they need in order to be found. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Shay Beardsley.
Hi, my name is Shay Beardsley. I'm 18 and I'm a senior at Stevens High School. I wish I could say exactly what Ms. Buback, Mr. Robinson, and Ms. Slack could say, but I'm an 18-year-old and I don't have that skill yet. I just wanted to come here and say that I think there's many more issues that we could be dealing with than the issue of destroying books. I've heard a lot of bad things that have happened in this city and in our district for our schools, but this was honestly baffling to me. And honestly, really, it was. I don't understand why we would destroy books. I mean, we literally had a list of things where we could donate, and so I understand that it was a problem of curriculum and some people didn't like it, and I understand that because people have different opinions, but why would we ever want to destroy books? I don't understand the concept of destroying a literary book just for being something that you deem inappropriate. I mean, people talk about minors, but if we're letting seniors read these books, most of us aren't minors. I'm 18 years old, and almost all of my friends are 18 years old. We can vote, so we should be able to read anything we want to read in a school that's going to let us. There's no reason to stop us from that. And what Ms. Slack was saying about not being represented in our schools, I was that kid. I grew up in this school district, and I never felt representative. I mean, look at me. I don't look like the kids that go to school in this district. I never felt representative in any of the books that I read, but Perks of Being a Wallflower was one of the first books, actually, that I read that made me feel seen. And now we're trying to destroy it. Not just give it away so that other kids can read it and feel seen, but literally destroy it. And I don't understand why. That's it.
Thank you. Here, Dr. Eldon Rice.
I was banished to the overflow. Good evening. Since we're talking about free speech tonight, I called two superintendents in the state, one in Watertown, the other in Meade County, asked them what is the penalty, if any, for, I'll use the term misgendering or using a dead name for transgender students. The superintendent in Meade County gave a pretty good response and said that unless your name was legally changed, they can't force you to use a new name. The superintendent of Watertown said something more vague, and I asked him if someone used the wrong pronoun, what would happen? He said, well, they would be asked to sincerely apologize. I didn't follow up and say, well, what would happen if they don't apologize? So, and he says, you're way ahead of us. Well, we all know what I'm talking about if you read the paper. There's a teacher there that gave a letter to some transgender students, and so does he have the free speech right to say what he said in the letter? I'm not going to say whether I agree or don't agree with the letter. That's not the point. He did state something factual about genetics. What concerns me is the dialogue surrounding, the problem we're having here is you're acting in local parenthood as parents. And we have pretty broad free speech rights guaranteed by the Constitution. You can truncate those by punishing and doing various things to children. So are you acting as parents? And that's a squishy subject that's been going on for 200 years. So are we going to get a policy defining what's going to happen for this teacher expressing his views in letters to the kids? Does he have free speech rights to do that? What concerns me is the activists are saying misgendering and dead naming is violence. Okay, so we see what they're trying to do. They're trying to connect what they consider inappropriate speech as violence. Now, violence is criminally prosecutable, right? So they're inflating this to cause division, and they're actually, in my mind, trying to make this a criminal offense. We see this with hate speech and this kind of thing. I don't know how you regulate an emotion or how you even know that, but it's the criminal activity that should be determine what the length of the sentence should be and that kind of thing. So we have to decide, board, what we're going to do about this. You're way behind the curve. I don't think that you should be arm twisting and making kids use pronouns that they don't believe fit their belief system. I don't believe that there's 52 genders, and that's another thing. They're trying to always make up new appropriate terms so that you're not using the latest appropriate term. It looks to me like what this movement is trying to do is keep people in trouble, and they're trying to equate your beliefs with violence and make that a criminal offense. We need a policy, guys. We need it now.
All right, that's time. Thanks. Okay, next speaker, Tanji Weaver.
Good evening, board. Sorry to keep you waiting. I was in the overflow. I would not encourage you to take those items off your consent calendar this evening. I'm going to read you what the author of Fun Home says in an interview. She says, I can understand why people wouldn't want their children to accidentally think this was a funny comic book and pick it up and see pictures of people having sex, because that's what you do see in this book. I can understand that. I think banning books is the wrong approach, and if you don't want your kids to read it, make sure they don't get a hold of it. So I would suggest that that's what you're doing. You are making sure that kids whose parents don't want them to see this literature don't get a hold of it, at least not in the school. No one is banning this book. The book is readily available online. It's probably available in the public library as well. But it should not be available in the school system. And since we've been talking about destroying stuff, I think it's worth mentioning that destroying innocence is something that's not recoverable too. The parents of children who come to the public schools put their trust in the public schools not to undo what they try to inculcate into their children. And some kids are more mature than others. When I look at these 5 books, you know, there are some are not as bad as others, but I would suggest that there is other literature that would accomplish the same lessons that of any value that would be learned from these books. I don't think that anyone in this room raised such a ruckus over the destruction of, I think it was 10 school buses that were usable, well-maintained school buses, that in order to get a grant for new school buses had to be destroyed. You can still see them at Pacific Recycling. They're stacked, they're crushed and stacked on top of each other. That is a terrible waste. And I did get a note from my daughter that she wanted to see the books herself to know what was, she copied me on an email, and I won't use the names, but she did send them to 2 school officials asking for copies of each of these books before they're destroyed so that she can see what has been made available to her 3 children in school. So she couldn't be here tonight, so I'm relaying that message to you. She would very much appreciate a copy of those books if that's at all possible. So with that, I will say that if the worry is waste, I think there are a lot bigger fish to fry. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next speaker, Raquel Akerson. Sorry, I can't read your writing. I think she goes by Rocky, if I remember right.
Hello, board. My name is Raquel Akerson. Some of you know me as Rocky, and I've been here before to speak on a variety of issues. Tonight, I hardly know where to begin. As I watch the deterioration of Rapid City area schools, I am only too thankful that I chose to walk away from the mess that many community members feel this board has made out of our schools. Whether I am here in person or not, I am paying attention, as many community members that are raising families are and are not able to be here at 5:30 p.m., a seemingly intentionally inconvenient time. I can only hope that the current election will improve communication, transparency, and fiscal responsibility, which were promises made by one or another of you when you were elected to your positions. I find it reprehensible that members of this board are not aware of the agenda items in their entirety prior to the meeting or when you vote about them. It seems to me that this move to destroy books, not ban, destroy books, is 1, fiscally irresponsible, and 2, insulting to our educators and students, as well as their families, because it insinuates that they are not capable of teaching and learning concepts that make them uncomfortable or that they or their parents may personally disagree with. Do you really think we are that stupid? I personally believe you owe this community more. More discussion of topics, clarification in plain English about why you vote the way you do. discussion of information shared with you during this public forum, and of course, responding to emails, which has been a struggle all year. I have seen more open communication is possible, and there can be less hostile, more productive conversations from candidates Jamie Clapham and Michael Birkeland in this new election. They seem to take the responsibility and gravity of some of the positions that you currently sit in much more seriously than you do.
Thank you. And last speaker, Cathy Rice.
I was standing there so we can go a little faster. My name is Cathy Rice, and I wanted to I signed up to give other people more time if they needed it, but this is an important topic in the community, and I feel that really we need to follow the law, the law of what some people have stated, the laws that were, what material is okay for children, what should be allowed in the schools. And parents, I think, I don't have my thoughts very well here, but because I ran in and I kind of got them all mumbled. But I'm glad this is on the discussion, and I think it needs to be discussed. It's been in the schools for a long time too. Different books or different things that we need to discuss what's appropriate for the ages of these kids and what does that teach. Like the other people have said, there's some great books out there that can teach, one of those stories was not bad. It's just if they would have left out the sex scenes in it, it was a good story. But I don't understand why those need to be added into the literature, that if they're trying to, I don't see how that is helpful for our even 18-year-olds. They can get these books anytime. I mean, they're, you can get them at the library, you can get them online, but to have them in our schools, I feel that we have to be responsible and follow the laws that we have set for books and literature to help our children learn, and that's the whole point of schools, to build on the learning and teaching them them reading, writing, arithmetic, and just to get them ready for college, especially in high school. And I don't know if these are the way that we should have it. I am sorry, and I'll have my thoughts together, and I apologize, but I just wanted to let you know my feelings as you discuss this today, later on in your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And next speaker, Mary Hahn.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm speaking today about the potential disposal of 350 books. Some of these books are less than 2 years old. Sending any useful public school resources to be destroyed is regrettable, but designating costly books to be destroyed without seeking options within the community is utterly reprehensible. Even harder to understand is the fact that the destruction of these 350 books, worth thousands of dollars, made it onto the board's agenda for destruction, apparently without knowledge of the board. How alarming that board members who comment frequently on fiscal responsibility are blatantly unaware that their district is apparently wasting thousands of dollars on unused educational resources by destroying books in a manner reminiscent of the Soviet Union. Attempting to destroy practically new books is not fiscal responsibility at all. I'm happy to announce that the community is prepared to take these 350 insightful books off of your hands for a purchase fee of $200 in order to prevent such a disturbingly wasteful act. Selling the books, even for a small fee, is more beneficial to the district. according to your own policies and procedures regarding surplus property, as outlined in Section D of the district's policies and procedures. You have a responsibility to dispose of surplus stock in the manner most beneficial to the school district. The only time the district may dispose of property is when the property is obviously inoperable or assessed at zero value. I doubt that these books are assessed at zero value, since some of them have never even been opened. It's completely baffling that the people who support prayer in school and believe that under God should be part of the pledge are the same people who are hoping to remove books that reference pertinent adolescent topics such as puberty, identity, bullying, and environmental destruction. It's especially silly to me that the very topics that are often cited as inappropriate for school are topics easily found in the Bible, the God of which you invoke at the beginning of every school board meeting. One does not have to look far in this book before finding stories of incest, child sacrifice, genocide, infidelity, murder, drunkenness, and more. In the very first book of the Bible, we read that God created two people and somehow populated the planet. An incredible feat, which absolutely requires incest. And it continues. The irony of Bible followers claiming that there is unsuitable content in these 12th grade classroom books is too great. I'll restate my previous offer. We're happy to take these books off the district's hands for $200 so that you don't go against your own policies by irresponsibly wasting thousands of taxpayer dollars destroying these books. You'll find my contact information in your inboxes so that we can arrange a time for me to purchase and pick up this valuable school property. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That is the last of the speakers, so we are now on to sharing the success. Mrs. Bray? I think maybe you need to introduce Public School Foundation. There they are, overflow. Yeah, let them go first, yeah.
So we have 732 above and beyonds tonight. We have a lot to draw, so thanks for your patience. But it is Teacher Appreciation Week, and we thought this was a great thing to do now. So thank you to all of the educators in the room, and the Rapid City Public School Foundation is going to give 80 of you $50 checks. So here we go.
Any chance you can count Kitty?
She's got it.
Good.
Yep.
Perfect.
All right.
We'll go fast.
Hope Owens, Central High School, special education teacher. Megan Essery, East Middle School, Parapro. Cass Morris, Valley View, nursing assistant. Sharon Ward, East Math. Shayna Ward, that is. Sorry, they're hard to read. Miss Harp from East by a student. Taya Hebron, Rapid City High School. Cindy Bennett, Stevens Activities. Danette Schumann, Stevens High School Parapro. Rami Crissel, Meadowbrook Reading Specialist. Sheila Ruber, Main Office Secretary at Stevens. Steve Burke from Grounds. Jennifer Wright from Jefferson, Speech Language Pathologist. Ashlyn Nami Wilson, Special Education. Courtney Tribute, East Middle School Physical Education. Ashlyn Marie Wilson, Special Education. Cheryl Barker, Knollwood, Interventionist. Lynn Alberty, West Middle School Band Teacher. Marissa King, Horseman Nurse. Jennifer Rourke, Stevens Teacher. Elizabeth Cameron, Valley View, 2nd grade. Ashley Eisenbrom, Valley View, 5th grade. Jeanette Cahill, Valley View, 4th grade. Mr. Seidel, Stevens High School, Band. Katie Farmer, Horseman, Dean of Students. Nancy Bishop, Valley View, Paraprofessional. Cindy Lester, Canyon Lake, Preschool Para. Bill Gore, West Middle School, Paraprofessional. Jenny Broderick, Stevens Activities Secretary. Mike Peckus, Valley View, Custodian. Leanne King, Valley View Secretary. Sheila Hansen, Stevens High School Librarian. Audra West, Blackhawk 4th grade teacher, last year's Teacher of the Year. Cheryl Barker, Knollwood Literacy. Robin Fenner, Canyon Lake Learning Center. Mr. Bias, Stevens Special Education. Tim Jones, Stevens Night Gym Custodian. That's quite a job. Travis Thompson, RCEC is an IT department. Anita De Silva, Stevens teacher. Carol Slazarski, Knollwood Elementary teacher. William Egan, East Middle School Social Studies. Chanel Blau, Grandview Playground supervisor. Heidi Jenkins, Valley View 5th grade. Ryan Chalberg, Stevens math teacher. Tyler Olson, Stevens teacher, science. Jessica Gates, Rapid Valley secretary. Sarah Baker, Wilson interventionalist. Amy Young, West Middle School, para. Kelsey Horn, Canyon Lake nurse. Shane Cox, Pinedale custodian. Mrs. Har, Stevens math teacher. Deandra Kolb, Horace Mann interventionalist. Mary Wills, special education at Horace Mann. What are we at, Sharon? Are we? Okay, perfect. Drew Foley, West assistant principal. Mandy McGuire, Stevens parapro. Michael Peckus, Valley View custodian. Jerry Haran, Grandview Food Service. Marissa King, nurse assistant at Horseman. Jace Farstead, Horseman first grade. Ann Host, West science teacher. Lori Carlson, Valley View custodian team lead. Kat Oafs, Knollwood first grade. Nick Rotella, Stevens science. Julie Weselick, Knollwood special education. Christy Tays, Knollwood classroom teacher. Angela Bascarood from the print shop. She's the print supervisor. Sheila Frizzell, Canyon Lake secretary. Adelina Sharkey, Valley View para. Jason Olson, Southwest teacher. Pamela Patrick, Horseman food service. We're giving Deb a workout over here. Nikki Curry, West Middle School Special Ed. Randy DeBray, West para. Jessica Deal, East counselor. Jenny Seals, Valley View literacy specialist. Maddie Foster, Knollwood literacy coach. Lisa Caro, Horseman literacy. Randy Lip, Robbinsdale Elementary interventional specialist. Rapid City High School. The whole staff. Jessica Ziza, Dean at South Park. Robin Fenner, Canyon Lake, para. Okay, and the last one goes to Ashley Julius, Meadowbrook third grade teacher. Great. So thanks to Denny Menholt Chevrolet for donating another $2,000 and to some other donors. We've done triple the number this year for a very hard year. Thank you, teachers and staff and board.
Okay, Kristen, you are up. Ms. Streisel. This is a really important, wonderful sharing of the success. Yes?
It's really nice to hear a list of all of our amazing people. I mean, it's a great way to start. My name is Kristen Strissell. I'm the HR director for the school system, and the reason that I am here today is to talk to you about the negotiations and collective bargaining process. For those of you who are HR wonks or generally interested in the inner workings of these types of things, what negotiations and collective bargaining are is the annual process by which we figure out what steps we're going to take forward with regard to wage, with regard to the rules that help govern all of our different bargaining units and help to move the district forward. And so the items that I'm going to be giving you a little bit more detail on are 9Q through 9T on your agenda tonight. The model that we use in the district is called interest-based bargaining. And the easiest way to share with you all what interest-based bargaining actually is, and the board knows this already, but just to share it with everyone else, is to compare how interest-based bargaining is different than traditional bargaining. A lot of times when you look at popular media, you see people coming to the table in a sort of hostile vibe about them, and then basically duking it out, fighting over limited resources, and that it's very much an adversarial way of coming together where you are basically creating winners and losers at the table. And I am really very excited that the district participates in something that is very different from that, called interest-based bargaining. And the idea behind that is that you come to the table collaboratively with representatives who have differing perspectives. You are transparent about your data, you share your financial information, and you use really good best practices and open conversation to come to quality results. And so to share with you a little bit about what we have done to arrive at the agenda items that are up for the board's consideration this evening is to tell you that we have been working on this for the last few months. The district has been partnering with each one of our 4 wonderful bargaining units, which are the teacher group, the administrator technician group, the paraprofessional group, and the classified group. And what this has looked like is coming together for weekly meetings, about 3 or 4 hours apiece, and really going through and listing what our prime interests and issues are, and then ranking them to figure out what are the things that are most important. From a financial perspective, we were delighted to see that the state allocated a 6% increase to public education this year, and so what the board decided to do based upon that was to take the total spend for each one of these bargaining units and allocate them 6% to spend as seems responsible. And so what that might look like is the teacher group taking the total amount of money spent on all salary and benefits and then saying what that dollar amount is and then coming together to find a good and responsible way to spend it. The difference with IBB is you're less focused on gamesmanship and more focused on collaborative solutions that have longevity and are both fiscally responsible and that achieve the different goals that you have. And so that's, if you were reading an HR handbook, that's probably what you would read. But what I would like to share with everyone this evening is what that actually looked like in the lived experience. And so for the last 2 months, we came to the table, we met with wonderful partners in those bargaining units, we had excellent conversations. Instead of using data as a tool to win your argument, we shared our financials openly, and we talked about what that meant, and we all came to common agreement on what the most important things are. I think that what I would share out with you all is I observe true partnership, and that being able to share that with everyone who might be listening is a really, really great win. Because if you have a solid process, you have something where people are able to speak honestly and make decisions based on data, I really firmly believe you're going to get to a lot better outcomes, ones that are durable. And every single unit came to the table doing a wonderful job working with us. We put a package in front of you this evening for each one of those units that we hope constitute solutions that are fiscally responsible and durable, and ones that recognize our extraordinary staff, build good structure into the district moving forward to help us, instead of bargaining year by year in a disjointed way, start to bargain year over year and build each year on moving forward and having those things not be disjointed. So those items that you see before you represent what we came together with, and I would say that I would like to give a very strong thank you to the Rapid City Education Association for coming to the table to represent both the teachers and the paraprofessionals, for the administrative staff bargaining unit to come to the table to represent our administrators and our technicians, to our classified group. While not an official group, they came to the table and did an extraordinary job as well, representing all of our hourly employees other than the paras. The other thing I would put out there is the vibe at the table, and what was very important to all of us was twofold. First, when we had hard conversations, the polar true north always became what is good for kids, what is good for our students. What decisions can we make at the table that will ultimately build a better and more lasting system for them? And also, right side by side with that, how do we recognize and retain our wonderful staff? And so not just thanking those 4 bargaining units, but also saying a very big thank you to the staff who have stayed with this district for the last 3 years through our pandemic, but also the many, many, many years prior. We have extraordinary people here, and I think the common consensus from the table, in addition to the items you see on the agenda, is that we have wonderful people here. And if we had all the money in the world, we would love to do absolutely everything for them because they are extraordinary. So if you have questions about the negotiated items, please let me know, but I am very excited to be able to share that those 4 units helped us to bring before you something that will allow us ideally to get contracts out to our contracted staff and letters of wage increase out to all other staff very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Okay, now, Mrs. Bray, I think, Staff Appreciation Week.
Good evening. My name is Katie Bray, and I'm the Interim Assistant Superintendent for the Rapid City Area Schools, and I'm pleased and honored to be here to speak for Dr. Simon and the Board of Education, and to read the following statement as an expression of the district's great appreciation for our staff during this special week. Staff Appreciation Week is observed annually during the first full week in May. This is a time to recognize, honor, and thank all Rapid City Area School staff as they continue to make a difference in the lives of youth. Despite the many challenges that we have continued to face this year, our staff members have adapted, persevered, and stepped up in so many ways to educate, transport, feed, and serve our students. The Board of Education and the Superintendent, Dr. Lori Simon, strongly encourage all members of the community to join with us in personally expressing appreciation to our staff for their dedication and devotion to their work and for all that they do to educate Rapid City's next generation. Please join me in a round of applause for our staff. I think they've left, but I wanted to make sure that we thanked Kara Flynn and Deb Frederick from our Rapid City Public School Foundation for all that they do for our staff and our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to, again, my favorite part, student representative reports. We have Colton Porter from Central High School first.
Thank you, President Thomas. Good evening, board and everyone in attendance. My name is Colton Porter, and I am excited to give you all my report. Firstly, Central High School's theater department wrapped up not only their spring production of Alice in Wonderland, but also the 2021-2022 theater season. Focusing specifically about this most recent show, Central hosted over 1,500 people in their general admission shows, but also they hosted 2,600 elementary students from all over the district. The purpose of the elementary shows, according to Mr. Speck and Mr. Lohr, are to act as what they call educational outreach, or to expose kids to the magic of theater and performing arts. Moving on, the ACT Honor Roll Breakfast will be held tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning. This is to recognize students who earned a composite score of 24 or higher on the ACT. And graduation speaker auditions will be held this Thursday after school. Obviously, this week is Teacher Appreciation Week. Student Council, in coordination with building admin, have worked to give back to teachers by buying gifts, meals, and other goodies to give back to our hardworking and very deserving teachers. This Friday, there will be a Freshman Academy signing, giving freshmen an opportunity to declare their desired academies for the following years. And next week, on the 12th, Central's Orchestra will be having their last concert in the theater. And in other musical news, on the 14th, there will be the final jazz band concert of the year, held at Main Street Square. This concert will be a joint concert, including East Middle School, both Central and Stevens jazz bands, as well as the Black Hills State Jazz Band. It's a very big deal. ROTC Awards will be held next Friday the 13th at 3:30 after school. Oh, and finally tonight, this week was the start of AP testing across the district, and so I'd like to say good luck to all the students as they prepare for these very difficult tests. But that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Abby Rutan from Rapid City High School.
Thank you. Today, over 30 local employers visited with the learners of Rapid City High School. In partnership with the Department of Labor's Career Advisor Program, Rapid City High School was able to host a summer job fair. This job fair was aimed at direct employment of learners that attended, so thank you to all who attended. In the same line of interest, Rapid City High School will be sponsoring a Pizza and Power Tools event this Friday. This will be an opportunity for learners to interact with over 30 industry professionals in the construction and technical trades. Sponsored by the Intro to Building Trades and Geometry and Construction courses, this opportunity will be open to all learners building-wide. Rapid City High School is excited to explore these career pathways this Friday. Rapid City High School houses many wraparound services to support the learners of our district. I have shared with you about the YMCA Jumpstart program and Feeding South Dakota Food Pantry at Rapid High. Today I want to share with you briefly about the district's GED Prep program housed at Rapid City High School. The GED Prep program is open to students who are 17 years old and prepares learners for the 4 GED tests. This year, 58 learners have passed the GED test thanks to this program, and another 16 learners are on track to complete in the next 3 weeks. Thank you to Ms. Prestjohn and Ms. Kavanaugh for supporting the learners of the GED Prep program. Finally, I would like to take a moment to enter into the rivalry that exists between Central and Stevens. I've heard my fellow student representatives on this board banter back and forth about their winning records. Rapid City High School does not have teams of our own to supply us with such tales. However, today I am proud to share of Rapid City High School's triumphant, glorious, remarkable, noble, undefeated, boastful, and victorious win over both Central High School and Stevens. During the week of Earth Day, the Student Voice Forum sponsored a friendly competition between all 3 high schools. Schools were given points for recycled items collected and cleanup efforts completed. At the end of the week, with 1,338 points, Rapid City High School took first place in the 2022 Rapid City Area School Recycle Wars. Congratulations, Eagles.
Well, I'm pretty sure we still lost. Second place is first loser.
Thank you to the Student Voice Forum for sponsoring this competition, and a special thanks to the 2 students who organized this event, Lily Knopp and Haley Howell. In closing, I will remind you of our school-wide expectations at Rapid High. Be respectful, be present, be courageous. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you, Abby. Okay, on to the conflict of interest, and none of the waivers have been passed.
Oh, President Thomas, can I give my report quickly?
Yes,
Thank you.
sorry, go
No,
ahead.
you're fine. Yeah, I know. I think Jim, the old central guy over there, maybe, hey, let's skip him tonight.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Abby, that cut deep. That was uncalled for. I was not ready for that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, my name is Hayden Bentz, and I'm the student representative from Stevens High School. It's hard to believe that the school year is nearly over, and with that comes many events and activities at Stevens. On April 21st, Stevens hosted a summer job fair where students were able to learn about various employment opportunities in the Black Hills. Additionally, Vitalent held a blood drive at Stevens this past Thursday, where both students and staff had the opportunity to donate blood in the gymnasium. In athletics, Stevens continues its slate of spring sports, including track, girls golf, boys tennis, and baseball. Each team is working towards their respective state tournaments, which are quickly approaching. Additionally, many seniors are signing letters of intent to continue playing sports at the collegiate level. There are far too many to individually recognize, which is a testament to the hard work and dedication they have all poured into their craft. We wish them good luck, both in their athletic and academic futures. In fine arts, the Region 8 large group contest was held at both Stevens and Central High Schools this past Wednesday, with instrumental groups being at Stevens and vocal groups being at Central. The event welcomed various schools from the surrounding area to present prepared pieces for judges from the University of Wyoming. It was a successful outing for the band, orchestra, and choir departments at Stevens, each of them performing very well. They now prepare for their final concerts of the year, all of which will take place in the coming weeks. This past Monday marked the annual Evening of Excellence, hosted by the Rapid City Public School Foundation. It recognized both the nominees and winner of the organization's Teacher of the Year Award, as well as the 45 students graduating in the top 5% of their class from Stevens and Central High Schools, along with a selected teacher chosen by those students. It was great to see many faces from the Board of Education, as well as Superintendent Dr. Simon at the event. Principal Hafner and I would like to congratulate Ms. Jennifer Maksiewski from Valley View Elementary on being honored as the Teacher of the Year for the 2021-22 school year, as well as Mr. Jeffrey Fierro as being named a Teacher of Distinction from Stevens High School. Lastly, congratulations to my classmates graduating in the top 5% of our class. It is a phenomenal achievement. Lastly, I would like to give a huge shout out to every Stevens staff member during Staff Appreciation Week. Teachers, janitors, paras, and administrators deserve all the praise in the world. They have worked extremely hard this year and have made a difference in the lives of every student at Stevens. In closing, I can't think of one bad thing to say about Central, so Colton gets off the hook for tonight.
That's 2 meetings. That's 2 meetings with nothing.
But obviously I need to start thinking about bad things to say about Rapid City High School. So Abby, next meeting, be on your toes. But for Colton, it's already punishment enough being a cobbler. No, okay, well. No, you're good. But thank you for listening, everyone, and go Raiders.
All right, thank you very much for the entertainment and your reports. All right, conflict of interest. We have no conflict of interest waivers, so we are on to the approval of the consent agenda. Does anybody want anything pulled?
I'd have 9M pulled for more discussion, and I just have I don't need it pulled, I just have a question, a line item question on 9C.
Okay, then we'll pull it just
Okay.
for that question. 9C, 9M, and I'm going to pull 9Q. It is just a language typo. All right, so from 9A to B, and then D through L, N through P, and then R through T. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Deb, seconded. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we're on to 9C. I do need a motion to approve first before discussion.
So moved.
Amy seconded. All right, discussion on that. What was your question?
There's a line item, Powerhouse Dance and DJ, for $6,000. So I just had a question on what that.
Fairly sure, Bishop Carr, that is the DJ for the combined proms for the high schools.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions on that? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that one is passed. 9M, I need a motion to approve. All right, we have Gabe and Deb. All right, discussion. I would take this moment to at least let the public know and to basically comment on some of the comments that were made. A decision to remove books in this case is not due to personal feelings about the contents, but it's about the appropriateness of the contents. And I think that we ought to have somebody at the end of this discussion motion to pull it from a vote in order to discuss with our legal team exactly how to dispose of these books that we are no longer going to use in the classrooms. I guess that's all I would say about it right now. Does anybody else have anything to discuss about it?
I have. The reason why I suggested it be pulled just for more discussion on the process of how the books got picked, how did they get on the agenda. I understand that even some of the books are missing from inventory. How did that happen? Who made that decision? I'm also in agreement of looking at other alternatives besides destroying the books, and so I think it would be worth pulling this item from the vote to just get a clarity on what we're doing besides just the vote for tonight.
Would you speak to this a little bit, Val? Mrs. Seals?
Yes. So English 12 is a new class that is running for the first time this academic year. English 9, 10, and 11 have existed, but we did shrink our English offerings. A Shakespeare was removed, creative writing, I think, was removed. Anyway, we came up with this year-long English 12 class. And so as part of that class creation that did go to instructional council, books were selected by teachers from each of the 3 high schools under collaboration with one of the teaching and learning specialists in Rapid City Schools. So 7 teachers, potential English 12 teachers for the new course, selected their books. And some books were in common between all 3 high schools. Some books were selected just by a single teacher at a single school. And so those arrived over the course of the summer months and were sent by the warehouse out to the buildings. The first question arose when one of the 3 high school principals sent me an image of a page in one of the books, an excerpt, and expressed concerns about it, not wanting it in their classrooms. And so, of course, you don't have to have it in your classrooms. Let's box it up and get it back. Was short order. It was still August when the second email came from a different building administrator. So then it's like we're going to have to pull these books in and do a review of them. That took a period of time. So in all, 5 books were questioned, and I guess what I would say to Bishop Carr's note about the missing books, I talked to Joe, who is our warehouse supervisor, and he believes that they probably already got swept up with the book buyer that comes out in the fall. That's a process that we go through every year, apparently, and those are shrink-wrapped pallets of books that a buyer comes through once a year and acquires. He can't guarantee that because that's not an inventoried pallet, but there was only one school, only 30 copies of that book, so they didn't ever get used. In fact, we suggested to the building principals that to, really warn their staff about thoroughly checking the contents of the book before they were used while we were in the midst of the review. So as far as other English books, this is the first time my office has had funds set aside for English books, and it was because it was a new course. Those of you that have sat on instructional council or heard instructional council updates, lots of new classes come through there, and they usually need instructional materials because it's a new class. And so that's the process that was used.
Other questions, discussion? Go ahead, Deb.
Who vetted the books? How were they vetted?
The teachers on the committee go through, but here's what I can't say. Doesn't mean that they physically touched every book. Maybe it came off the Newbery list because it's an award winner. They didn't have a credit card to buy all the books that they considered as part of curating this list.
So the other question I have, and I don't know if we need Kelsey for this or not, if one of these students a student had these pictures on their phone, would they be expelled from school?
I can't answer that.
Yeah, that's definitely a question for legal as far as,
I'm just curious if, I mean, because,
well, and that's part of what we'll do, is going through these questions with them, the whole legal team. I would say that, you know, this is on the surplus list, and that if you look at the surplus list, it's interesting that, you know, there's a few times in a year that a teacher will reach out and ask, why is this book being sold, or what is this amount for, and I'll inquire. It is pages and pages and pages long with details of, we bought for $10 each a certain number of notebooks. Here we have, at the very end of the surplus list, 5 books, along with chairs and computers that they're selling, and it's a long list. Go ahead and go look at it. We have to be able to, as board members, to trust our administration when they make decisions to put these on, to be able to trust that they're doing the right business. We cannot go through every single penny that goes through all the time. Now, if anybody out there would like to volunteer, I do have a couple of teacher friends that do this on sometimes, but not all the time. If there's volunteers that want to go through every single impressed and claims sheet and every single number, please let us know. It's a long list, and so we have to have at some point the ability to be able to trust our administration when they put things on these long lists. I need to clarify that, because that was one of the comments out there, that we're supposed to go through every single thing. At some point, we have to trust our administration as well. Did you have something? Go ahead.
Madam President, I guess my personal feeling on this is that we probably have a policy and a process situation going here that we may need to, I guess, start taking a look into. And you know, I guess if we have to define maybe the yeses and the nos in the policy INP of controversial topics. So I guess my recommendation is that we either have a study session or we sit down as a board at whatever time we can determine, possibly with Val, and we take a look at this, obviously a little more in depth to help out. Thank you.
Yep. Any other comment or discussion? Go ahead, Clay.
Madam President, to your comment at the beginning, so we're going to vote to pull this to discuss at a later date on one, I guess, clarification I wanted to get is, you know, how did it get to be destroyed rather than be donated, recycled, what that process looks like on these books. And I think it'd be good for the public too to know some of that.
So if we pull this item, we pull every single hundreds of items. Yeah. Or I think that's the best way to do it, instead of trying to single out anything. At the very least, the rest can be put back on, and we can have further discussion about those 5 books as it goes to the next meeting. Okay. So yes, I'll need a motion to pull it to discuss in a study session.
I'll make that motion.
I second it.
Okay. You have a comment first?
Yeah, I do. It sounds to me like a certain level of the process worked if the principals were concerned about the books. I appreciate that they are showing leadership to be concerned about the students. I am learning that maybe the teachers didn't understand every teacher did not understand what was in the books. So I think I agree with Mr. Doney that I don't know that there is direction in policy given on how to choose this, how to choose books that are purchased as part of new courses, if that needs to happen or not, or if there are any guidelines. But I would say that is a job that the board puts forward. But as we look at policy, the policy needs to also be able to be vetted through public comment. And maybe there is a solution so that parents' rights are protected. and that students are also able to choose hard topics if they would like to choose in their own choice. So I agree with Gabe that I think that the process needs to be evaluated and a policy needs to be created with great public input to guide the process of choosing books and curriculum. I'm pretty sure there's a policy that talks about curriculum, but maybe it just needs to be a little
Yeah, there
reviewed.
is a curriculum policy, and what's interesting is, for example, the presentation you're going to see here later on about science for elementary, major adoptions like that have always gone through council and then come to the board as an overview and then come to the board as a vote. One-offs and book sets have never had that level of scrutiny. In fact, I've been in this job 7 or 8 years, and I've never bought a book for an English class. So I just would point that out. That's
So how are
I
books
couldn't tell you,
purchased
yeah.
for the English classes? That's not clear.
It's not clear.
Okay,
And I
thank
will
you.
say, all the way down to, I used to be a third grade teacher in this district, and each building used to get an allocation of a couple $1,000s for our leveled readers. Nobody was telling me what I was picking either for my third grade classroom. I just was, you know, it's your professional judgment.
Yep, go ahead.
I just want to state for the record, based on the comments during the comment section, my job as a board member to represent all students and all ideas. And so sometimes I'm especially sensitive, since I am a pastor, that I may be biased. But when I make a decision, I said this on my campaign trail and will say, I will always make a decision that I think is best for students, not my personal. In fact, an example is when we changed the grading system from 7 to 10, I personally thought it should have stayed at 7, but again, in the interest of what's best for everybody, I voted that way. And so I wanted to make that statement because the board gets accused a lot of having personal agendas and personal biases. And so I just want to say, for me personally, that's not the case. I always try to look out for all students and all opinions and all parents and all ideas.
Thank you. Yep, go ahead.
I think that people need to understand the dynamic issue here. There was no ulterior motive by board members to place these books on the surplus book list. It's a routine procedure that happens within the school district as curriculum is changed and new books are desired. So I hope that at least that piece of information has become clear, that the school board members were not out to hide anything from somebody.
Well, and we certainly didn't put it on the agenda. We trusted the administration to do what's right. Yeah. Go ahead, Deb.
And I don't know if you can answer this, Val, or not. Who decided, or how did we decide to destroy the books instead of sell them?
That's a good point.
That's a great question. You know, the book buyer determines, according to Joe, what they want and what they don't want. They had already been through in the fall, so we're sitting on these books that are taking up space in our warehouse, and Joe usually comes up with a shred pile over the course of the year, but to track things that we've spent money on, for example, our 20-year-old elementary science materials will be shipping out soon. Those will get destroyed because they're going to get zero valued. If a book buyer doesn't want them, that's just the process that happens. And so for record-keeping's sake, I am to put an entry into some software program that just says this item is surplus, zero value, and that's it.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a few comments from the fiscal side of this. Obviously, I think it's important to understand this is really two different issues, one being obviously the selection of the curriculum material, which my area has nothing to do with, but secondly, questions regarding specifically the surplus process and how that works. So that is it. I don't believe people could imagine how incredibly complex that process is and how large and difficult it is in a district our size to manage the surplus. So Mr. Joseph Magbuhat, who is a fantastic employee of this district, is our warehouse director. He largely takes the majority of the responsibility for that process in terms of managing the logistics, from moving the surplus from schools and our facilities out to the warehouse to both store and then determine oftentimes what to do with recommendations, oftentimes from either administrators, principals, whatever the case may be. I would like to assure the board that I believe that Mr. Magbuhat does everything in his power to recoup everything he can from any type of surplus material that makes it out to that warehouse. And I would even go a step further, and I would say that's a point of pride for Joe. He has really changed the way that the district operates that surplus function over the years. He's taken the auction style to an online auction style, which has really benefited the district. We make back a significant amount more revenue off of surplus property now than we did any time in the previous history of the district. So I just really want to caution against the idea that that this was, some type of a choice to be wasteful, because that's very far from the truth. If you look at that surplus list, as you noted, Mrs. President, that is a very long list of materials. And so also we have to trust in the people that we put in charge as administrators that they are making good decisions in terms of how they do that. And you'll see that there's multiple forms of disposition of that surplus just on that list alone, from recycling to being sold back to computer buyers to trucks and vans being traded back to dealerships. So it's a very, very complex process. And the last thing I would note is that there are times where, due to circumstances of the situation, it is appropriate that things are destructed. And I know that's sometimes hard to understand, and it would be great if we could get value out of every single thing that the district surplus, but that's just not the reality. There are times where, because of the difficulty of either storing or finding a home for those items, it becomes financially a better route for the district to destroy some of those items. So again, I think these are two separate issues. However, I wanted to address some of the thoughts on the surplus process and what that looks like and means. Again, I would assure the board that is not something that happens without thought, and I believe it is well managed at the warehouse level. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Any other comments or discussion from board? Go ahead, Clay.
Yeah, thank you for that, Coy. That is a good explanation of it. I do, being in charge of a business, understand that, get down to the details of some of this, it becomes cost benefit of, how much resources you put in to do that. I guess I would say, since we look like have an offer to buy these from us, if we, can we take that up? I don't know if that violates our policy or not, but.
No, sir, I do not believe it does. As a matter of fact, I would also point out that if you look at the very front portion of that agenda item, it cites the actual codified law 6-13-1, which states the governing board of a political subdivision may sell, trade, loan, destroy, or otherwise dispose of any land, structures, equipment, or property which such governing board has, by appropriate motion, determined is no longer necessary, useful, or suitable for the purpose for which it was acquired. So certainly the board would have under its purview the ability to say, that if there was an appropriate offer made and the board agreed to that we would sell those items to the person who made that offer.
I would have one caveat that other law would have to be discussed, and that's why I said we need to go through legal, because if this is pornographic in nature at all, we have our name stamped on this, and I'm not sure that we are allowed to distribute that. I want to run it by legal, so it's got to be run by legal for sure. So, any other
that's wise.
discussion? Yeah, thank you. Yes.
I was just wondering, firstly, just how are these curriculum boards selected? Because it sounded like from what I was hearing that they're not entirely English 12 teachers teaching the material. They could be other teachers or administrators. I was just wondering.
Val, that'd be you.
Yeah, my office sends a message out or makes the phone call, but in this case, it was an email out to just high school principals, because they're the ones involved, asking for volunteers to serve on the committee from their building, and if they had any recommendations, please share those with us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with no further comment or discussion, we have a motion to remove this for further discussion and have legal go through it. And I have my second, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay. On to 9Q. I was informed that, I don't have it in front of me, Kristen, I'll have you discuss it, and please take note of the language change, Sharon. Go ahead. Wait, hold on one second. I need a motion to approve it first.
So moved.
Amy seconded. All right, go ahead, discussion.
This will be a lot quicker than my last update. So if you look at the classified item that we have pulled on page 2, there is an item that reads addition of personal day to designated positions, and it currently reads addition of 1 personal day to positions that qualify to earn sick leave but do work the hours threshold required to earn vacation leave. It should say do not. The idea behind that item, as the negotiations team put forward, is that if someone is a 12-month full-time employee, they have a vacation balance that's afforded to them. But if someone is a part-time employee, they have sick leave, but there's very little other mechanism for them to be able to take leave if they have an important family event or something like that. And so this agreement provides the people who qualify to earn sick leave but don't hit that vacation threshold with some support. So adding the word not in there in front of vacation.
Okay, so I have a first and a second for approval with the caveat that we add that word not in there. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Great. Okay, first reading of IKF, graduation requirements, and underneath that, IKF E4, the credit procedure for those requirements. We also have the student handbooks with language changes, and again, this is the first reading. And so I need a motion and second for the number 10, all of 10. Troy and Deb? All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. All those opposed? All right. And now we are on to the reports of the superintendent, and we have first up the dyslexia work group by Dr. Hafer.
Okay, good evening, board. As you can see behind me, I have my dyslexia work group team. We are going to be describing a little things that have been happening over the past 6-7 years. I am going to start out talking about the state dyslexia report, some higher education information. Valerie is going to take over and talk about some district trainings that we've done. And then I have some teachers and psychologists here to walk you through RTI process and special education for students that are being flagged or tagged as maybe having some dyslexia tendencies. So, Shirley probably sent you a very large packet of information. If not, it should have been with the PowerPoint. If you don't have it, I can send it out to you. This information here really talks about the things that we'll talk about today. So first up, I want to talk about the state dyslexia plan. They had a dyslexia committee that came together and put together a 5-year plan for us, and that was over last year. In speaking with Linda Turner, who is the state director, she stated that the 5-year plan was at the end of its spot, and we're moving into what's called South Dakota literacy to keep moving and doing some of the trainings that we've had in the past. In the state dyslexia plan, I also added in the summary for the 5-year plan, also the dyslexia handbook that is in here as well that we follow. And so they've done a great job of pulling that through. One part that I did want to point out was the higher education piece. I was curious myself to see where our colleges have been in pulling in dyslexia to do training for our new teachers who are coming through the program. I reached out to USD and Black Hills State University because I have friends who are professors. They have started out with one class that's called SPED 101 that all teachers who are going into the educational field have to take, and dyslexia is a part of that. In both of the schools, there's 1 to 5 other classes that they have added in for special education and reading to bring forward more information about dyslexia for our teachers that are coming into schools, which is really great. That's been a great start. So now I'm going to turn it over to Valerie, and she's going to talk about what we've been doing in our district.
Oh, no, here.
This was Valerie.
It was a while ago when we practiced the order, sorry.
Oops. Previous. I can do this, I promise. There we go. You're just right there.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you're right there.
I apologize. I advanced the slide and I wasn't even supposed to. Yes, so thank you. And I think it is great that higher education is getting on board and adding more reading courses to their offerings. I think that's been an area that's been lacking, and for many years in Rapid City, we actually ran 9 different, 3 different 3-credit courses just to the subject of teaching reading. And saw the benefit of that for new teachers. So in lieu of that, it's great that it's part of their base program. As far as the district learning and training, different groups of teachers, parapros, and school psychologists, special educators have had many training opportunities from 95% group, which you've heard about, regarding Acadience and benchmarking. Also course source book in 7 of our schools that were part of that grant that Dr. Gaden brought in. And of course our dyslexia 101, 102, and 103 classes. So those are required trainings for our teachers each year. They've done book studies, a lot of Kilpatrick's work. Karen Merkel's book was a book study for our dyslexia committee this year. And Pat Johnson and Katie Keir too. So the trainings started back in 2014, and some of them were offered by the state of South Dakota as part of the dyslexia 5-year plan, but they've continued through this year. We send as many people as we can, as often as we can, recognizing that substitutes have been an issue of the last 2 years, which brings in webinars. We have attended a ton of webinars. Probably 25, it looks like, from this list. So we're continuing to study and continuing to educate ourselves as educators.
All right, my name is Jody Rufflet, and I'm an intervention specialist at Valley View. And I'd like to walk you through the RTI plan. I live it and work it every day. And so we start out with just the core and the WIN instruction. This is for all students. We start out in the fall and in January and now in May doing our Acadian sweep or assessments, and the student classrooms also do the MAP assessments. We use this data to determine if students need further diagnostic testing with phonemic awareness or phonics, and also at the end of the year now we're seeing the growth that our students have made. The win is again for all students, whether that needs to be intervention or acceleration. We use explicit instruction from our Wonders program that we adopted, as well as the 95% material. Below and well below students, we try to keep them in groups of 8 or less when they have been identified as struggling readers. And of course, progress, even in the win, we progress monitor to make sure our students are making growth. And if they continue to make growth, we keep them in the core and win instruction. If a student comes and through our data is showing that they are struggling, we move to an RTI plan. This is a team that meets. They are the classroom teacher, the literacy specialist, the intervention specialist, and the administrator, and we look at that data to determine what is best to route for our students to meet their needs. If a student we feel is not making adequate progress, we move to a strategic intervention. And what this means is we meet with and communicate to the parents through a letter or phone call that their student is struggling, and we've identified that. They will meet in a small group with 5 or less students with a trained individual with the 95% material. And again, we progress monitor every other week, so very frequent. If after that time that the student is still not making progress that we would like to see, we look to see what kind of changes we can make for the student. It might be changing the instructor. We've done that quite a bit. We might make the group down to a group of 3 students, whatever is going to best meet the student's needs. If we determine that neither one of those will make the student's need, we move to an intensive intervention. Again, that is more time meeting with the trained individual. We again communicate that with parents, and we do weekly progress monitoring. After a round of that, then we determine what the student needs. The team reconvenes, and if they are not where we would like them to be, we may consider them for special ed referral. And again, that is communicated to the parents. The parents have input in that, and we take the student to our MDAT team that meets. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Real
Tara.
quick, can we go back to how long is that process till you end up going from beginning of testing the K-5 core instruction to maybe having to?
Okay, the core instruction in the WIN, we say 2 cycles. So that tends to be, we try to have at least 12 lessons. So that would be 1 cycle, or each cycle would be 12 lessons.
How, like in time-wise, months?
Well, it depends. Our school, they only meet 3 days a week. Some schools meet 4 days a week. So our cycle, with only being 3 days a week, to get the 12 lessons, it would be about 4 weeks. And then we reconvene, and so then they'd have another 4 weeks of just the regular WIN. And again, when we meet with our core instruction, or with our Acadians data, we take the lowest of the low right off the bat. So when they are in quadrant 4 of Acadians, we automatically at Valley View take it with the intervention specialist and the literacy specialist to get those students right off the bat. And then after those 2 cycles, then we go to the strategic, and the strategic is, if I remember right, 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. Again, we have to have 3 data points, and as soon as those 3 data points are below their aim line, then we meet again to do the intensive, and then again 3 data points, which would only be 3 weeks. So I do have some students that started in January, and so we didn't finish, we didn't have enough time because of the end of the year. So they start again right away in the fall, so we don't lose that progress that we've made or the time that they've made, so they don't have to start over. So it's roughly about 12 weeks, 12 to 16 weeks that we try to.
Before they're recommended for, because it sounded like 4 months.
No. Okay, so let me calculate it. So it's okay, because, and again, we, as a team, we meet, for example, I took a 5th grader, we kind of skipped, we went to strategic one round and said, nope, they need to go intensive because they're so low, so we didn't do the 2nd round of strategic. We moved them, so kind of as a team decision, if, depending on the needs of the student, before we brought them forward for referral.
So it could take up to
It could, if they're making
half the year,
Yeah,
at
well,
least.
if they're making progress, then we determine that we have to keep going before we bring them for referral. But if
Okay.
they're not making progress, we kind of speed it up.
Okay,
Does that
thank
make
you.
sense? Okay.
Hi, I am Tara Knowlton. I am a teaching and learning specialist in our district. This middle school literacy response to intervention was revised this year to just update, make some revisions, and then more closely align to the process at elementary. So our core instruction that Jody talked about at elementary, that is for all of our learners. All 6th through 8th graders have a core English language arts class. In addition to that, all 6th graders across our district also take a reading class. For any 6th through 8th grade student who is identified as needing intervention, they are also scheduled into a reading lab or an ARC class, which would kind of mirror that strategic and intensive intervention at the elementary level. The high school RTI matrix is undergoing revisions, and then all 3 matrices will be available for the board upon completion.
Hey, I'm Julie Rimmery. I'm a school psychologist in the district. And so once a student has kind of gone through that RTI process and we've noticed that they're not making progress with what the core and intervention is offering them, that's when they're referred for that special education evaluation. And like Jody said, it can kind of vary depending on the student needs and what their progress has looked like, how quickly that process or that referral takes place. As with all of our educational disabilities, there's no one assessment that really tells us yes or no. It's dyslexia, it's not. It's really a combination of data that we put together through our evaluations that help us kind of determine where they're at. And so you can see on the slide possible assessment areas for each student if we're suspecting that they have dyslexia and we're moving forward with an evaluation. We will gather data in all of these areas in one way or another. Specific formal assessments that we use for each of these areas, we have a variety of assessments that we do use. I believe they were emailed to you guys earlier this school year, kind of a list of what we have in our district right now. But what assessment is used for each area is really left up to professional judgment of the trained professional that's going to be administering that test. Each of the tests are a little bit different just in how they present information, how they ask for information, and so really we look at what are that student's needs, what test is best going to help me get the information I want to get for looking at dyslexia. Once we've gone through our evaluation, and let's say our team gets together and says, yes, they do kind of fit that profile of a student with dyslexia, we still have to look at, do they meet the criteria for special education eligibility? In South Dakota, dyslexia is under that category of specific learning disability. Our state has set forth certain criteria for students that students have to meet in order to be eligible under that category. So if they do meet that discrepancy criteria that our state uses, and the team feels that more specialized instruction is needed for that student, they can proceed with parent consent, of course, in developing an IEP, which is an individualized plan that provides services and accommodations. And what those services and accommodations are kind of defined by what the evaluation discovered. If a student is found to have dyslexia but does not require that specialized instruction or doesn't meet our state's discrepancy criteria, the team can also consider a Section 504 plan, which is for people with disabilities that need accommodations. So not any different specialized instruction, but they need some additional accommodations in the classroom in order to accommodate their disability, which in this case would be dyslexia. And then of course, through either of those plans, parent involvement is key. Parents are a part of the team, and they're part of developing whatever would be on the IEP or the 504.
So really quickly, so what is the policy to refer a student whom you suspect a disability? Do they have to go through the RTI process?
The RTI process is not required in order to refer a student for a special education evaluation. Alerting building admin, alerting the team, and discussing those concerns is kind of where our referrals start in our buildings. That RTI data is really helpful when our teams are looking at students and looking at their progress
to help us determine if a disability is suspected, because if they're getting intervention services and they're making great growth, I'm less likely to suspect a disability because they're getting what they need and they're making progress.
And unfortunately, dyslexics are very smart, so they can get through that and not be suspected of it and move through looking like they've got progress. And then they'll hit a wall at some point, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, where all of a sudden, then there's a suspicion, you know, of that. And so if our professional learning development and the webinars that people are going through, teachers, every single teacher should be able to have some kind of recognition. If we don't have a policy, and obviously you said you don't have to do the RTI, but if there's if they know they're suspecting it, that teacher can refer then straight to an assessment. But and the other thing is, I know that the 5-year dyslexia plan, I was on that committee, there was, within the first year, supposed to be implemented an assessment. And there are assessments for dyslexia. They're not very long. They take a lot less longer than all of the assessments we've got going on. And Kilpatrick has one himself, and I know that we could adopt it. So I would still like to see an assessment actually specific for this, because you can catch it. So those teachers that are suspecting, because they've now learned what dyslexia is, could then go straight to you or whoever the team for...
Our building teams.
Yeah, the ability teams, and say, I think this person has it. And then if that were to happen, do you guys just automatically do it, or do you have other steps that you have to have, not just the suspecting?
So that's a good question. A referral for an evaluation or a suspected disability in most buildings results in that team meeting to really discuss what the concerns are, what's all the data we have at this time, and then the team determines, do we suspect a disability and are we moving forward with parental consent? So it's not an automatic referral means we're going to evaluate, but it does mean that we are going to meet and really look at this child and what's going on for them and what's happening in the classroom.
Okay.
And I think when you're talking about Kilpatrick's assessment, the past, that is a really good screener assessment looking at basic phonological awareness skills for children. It itself is not a diagnosis tool for dyslexia, but it is hitting at those core deficiencies that a lot of students with dyslexia have.
Well, and at the very least with that assessment or the other ones that are out there, you can, if they have hit many of those markers, you can make a more official you can say, nope, this one definitely probably has a problem, let's do something about it. So it's really helpful for us to have one of those, at least as a resource and a tool for those that are suspecting kids of dyslexia. And it goes back to all kids have some growth in some ways, and so just because they have growth doesn't mean they don't have this disability. So that's just a comment, sorry.
I agree. Nope, getting more of those tools in our teachers' hands so they can really pinpoint what's going on and help the students right away would be very valuable.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name's Kim Weber, and I'm an MTSS literacy coach at both Blackhawk Elementary and Valley View Elementary schools. And I just wanted to highlight some of the work that we have been doing for general education teachers and students in a regular general education classroom. The previous speakers talked about the RTI process, special education evaluations. It's really important that all our students receive strong foundational reading instruction, and that teachers understand and know how to deliver that instruction. And as Karen Merkel outlined in the last study session that we had on dyslexia, that explicit instruction in phonological awareness and phonics is important for all students, and especially so that we can see that students have had that appropriate instruction before we start to determine that there might be a problem. We really have to know that they have received strong research-based instruction in reading in the core reading classroom. So with that, we have built teacher capacity with our dyslexia courses, 101, the more of the what is dyslexia, the 201, where it helps teachers to connect the materials that they have at their grade band and dyslexia and how those fit together. We keep New teachers will also take those courses, so it's not something that's been completed once our experienced teachers have taken them. Those are rolled out every year for new teachers. We have district and building-based professional development using our core source book, which really also hits the research, strategies, and instruction for foundational reading. Our Wonders is our core materials and has strong lessons in phonological awareness and phonics that are delivered across the elementary curriculum in the regular general education classroom to all students. And then it's been spoken about more that the 95% group is for students receiving more strategic and intensive instruction by our specialists. We also, on the list, you see letters. It's a deeper training for teachers that are literacy coaches, a number of specialists and classroom teachers. It's very intensive. It's a 2-year course, but we have more and more of our staff that is choosing to take it, and that we've received grant funding from the state to be able to have more participants in that. Our assessments with Acadians have directly fed into choosing our materials and instructing, again, that strong core instruction in the regular classroom. So I think we've come a long way over the last 5 years in really implementing both the materials, the strategies, and professional development to build teacher capacity.
So 2 quick questions.
Sure.
Is what you mentioned about the teacher capacity with the foundations, the phonological awareness and phonics, is that in every single school?
It is in terms, it's to a different degree. We have 8 buildings that have been part of a state grant, the SPDIG grant, the State Personnel Development Grant is what it stands for. And so we have literacy coaches and additional funding for materials that have gone into certain buildings that were part of that grant. So they have received deeper coaching and professional development, but from there, that has also gone around, have gone outward to other buildings and at the district level. Some of that work has been piggybacked on from our teaching and learning specialists who offer a course using the core source book, and our training for new teachers and for all teachers using our Wonders program. So yes, all teachers have received the training. There are some schools that have received a deeper amount and more hours and support.
Okay, and one more question. Do all the schools have the source book that you mentioned?
No, they don't all, like individual teachers don't all have copies.
Each building does.
There are copies available at the district level, and but no, not every building has a copy per teacher.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jenna Hansen. I'm a special education program specialist, and I work primarily with the elementary learning center programs. So the next thing that we wanted to talk about is some of the next steps we're going to take to continue our work with dyslexia in our district. We are going to be doing presentations at the building level. We are aware that we offer the dyslexia courses. At the beginning of the year, we offer a lot of trainings, and so we understand that some teachers may not get as much information out of those trainings as we would like them to. So we will also be going to buildings and providing some information specific to dyslexia and students who struggle with reading. We will also be launching the Dyslexia 301 course, which is more about utilizing assistive technology for learners not only with dyslexia but all struggling readers. And so that's focusing on, like I said, those assistive technologies because we are experiencing obviously more of those e-learning environments these days. Finally, we are planning to provide some talking points for educators in the fall so that they have something to talk about with parents when parents approach them and say, I'm concerned my child may have dyslexia. A lot of our staff doesn't quite know what to say when a parent brings that up. So our goal is to put together a sheet of some talking points that can address some of those frequently asked questions so that they can address those with parents more adequately, I guess, when they bring up those concerns.
Will there be something included in that, in a process for them to follow if they think that their child has that? Like, does the school have a process, okay, if you as a parent suspect this, what's the next step for you?
We have not specifically talked about those details, but I do think that that's a good idea. I think most of our educators know the process of the RTI matrix, but if they haven't been a part of it, they may not know exactly where to begin. So I think reminding them of that is a good idea.
Well, and some parents may even know this, but the RTI doesn't necessarily get you to, oh, this child has dyslexia. So even with that, telling those parents that doesn't necessarily help the parent find out, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, some of those details, maybe work those out for the parents' process.
All right, do you have any questions for the group?
I sure do.
All right.
Okay, first question. So the actual intervention and specialized instruction, what does the day-to-day instruction look like?
That's me. So I meet with my groups for 30 minutes, 3 times a week in my building, and I follow the 95% curriculum for part of it. I also work with the leveled library that is part of that to get into the actual taking what I'm teaching them with shapes. We use colors for the blue chips for the consonants, red for the vowels, and we go through each, for example, if they're a short vowel, we do intensive for each vowel, and then we take that into transferring it to text. And it's a group, and we just follow the lesson and what they need and try it in a variety of ways, the multisensory approach, and every day.
Always in a group?
Always in a, well, not necessarily. I had a single child that was in a group because they were needing that. They've been through a group of 5, a group of 3, and so we tried it one-on-one just to see if we could make some more progress. So usually, like I said, 3 is usually where we try to keep the highest needs students.
Homework?
I'm sorry, what?
Homework?
Not necessarily, no. We let the parents know, and
Parents
we
intervention?
encourage them to read, but.
Okay. Can I keep going?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so let me tell you a little story.
Okay.
Dyslexic is in my family. My mom knew it, worked with my sister who's a professor at a college in Oklahoma, and South Dakota didn't do anything for her till she got there. When she got to Oklahoma, they gave her material, they gave her everything on auto. So do we do that here? Or is it just what you teach in there? Do we give them tapes for their homework, stuff like that?
At the elementary level, no.
All levels. I'm talking all levels. We don't do that. Okay. So my brother has it, and he's a business manager for a union down there. Got to do a lot of reading. So my uncle, who was a principal in the Rapid City Area School District when my oldest son, we thought there were some issues. And my uncle sat down for an afternoon visit with my son and said to me, just take and get him tested for dyslexic. So we did. So 2 hours every day, 6 days a week. That was what my son went through from 1st grade through 8th grade. After that, it all clicked. He's still dyslexic, still has the changes, but he knows how to compensate. Graduated with over a 3.5 at a very prestigious college and has a fabulous, but that's because it started at 1st grade. In this district, with zero help from the school district, other than my uncle, who was a principal till he passed away. So where are we at?
Well, that's why we adopted the Wonders curriculum, the 95%, the core source book, the phonological assessments. When you talked about the PAST, I've done those. I've done the PASSI to get kids to know exactly what skill that they need starting in kindergarten.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's what I wanted to hear.
I would, just to answer some of your question too, you can get audio. You can get somebody to do the, the tests orally, and my daughter does, but only until she gets an IEP. They have to have an IEP, but the process, it seems like it's too slow to get to that IEP. If we're talking, 3 to 5 months, just even, and if they're making growth, they're not thinking, they're suspecting of it without some other kind of tool, not necessarily a diagnosis, but that's why the dyslexia workbook from the state, or work group from the state, number one, in first year, they said you have to have an assessment, and I think they're short, and they're a good tool to at least get to the point of, yes, this one needs a diagnosis, and we have school psychologists that can do that. So in order to get these kids quicker to reading by the 3rd grade level, which is one of our top mission priorities in this district, we've got to get a little bit faster to some of these kids getting, like you said, the oral, the things that they do, because they can comprehend really well, and they can talk to the teachers, to the test. Orally, it's the frustration of the writing down and the reading that happens for dyslexics that prevents them from excelling, basically. So.
Exactly, and I think something that needs to be mentioned, when they take the Acadience test, there's 4 quadrants, and what Kim was talking about going into that 4th bottom quadrant is that area what you're talking about. We pull them from there, and there is a quick assessment that they do within Wonders, and then we break the groups up, because I was at Valley View with Jody when we did this, and we would break up the groups, and there were some kids that were in the quadrant that were so low, we're like, we're gonna push you right up to that intensive part, give you 2 or 3 weeks to see if you're catching, and if you're not, then we're going to a referral. So there are pieces and parts where we're jumping sooner, and I agree with you about the assessments that our psychologists can do. I've seen Julie do that, and going through an IEP and bringing that information forward too. And I think every year we've gotten better and better and better at this, and so we need to move forward this coming year to do even better, to help with our regular education teachers, really, to understand this is what you're looking for, whether we're looking at dyslexia, hyperlexia, or mixed combo with 2 of them, and how do you split those apart and be able to do that both for the kids. We know that in like Google Classroom or Google Forms, you can click over and do all of the verbal talking, it'll talk for you, and getting headphones for them. I even saw the other day somewhere where there's a machine that you can take a picture of the page and then it will read to you. Back when I was a special ed teacher, we used Kurzweil, and that was real monotone, but it did what it needed to do. So I think all the pieces and parts are there. We just need to succinct it together so that everybody's understanding, and so that our parents really understand what to do too, because it's such a big, it's a big animal. There's so much to it, and we need to pull that down, and that's really one of our processes for next year. So I hope that helps a little.
Any other questions from board members? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think maybe next time I would rather have this in a study session. It's not your fault, it's mine for having put it on the agenda, because this is something I think we need to spend more time thinking about our questions and being able to have that time to talk with you guys. So.
I think we would all love that.
Yeah. This is a little late, too. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Val, you're up with the elementary science.
And I have very little to say about this other than to introduce 2 of my TLI specialists who have been working so closely with our elementary teachers. All I have to say is I've gone out to the buildings and done lots of observations of science instruction in these pilot classrooms, and the excitement of the students is absolutely palpable. They love it. They love getting to do experiments and get their hands dirty and just get up and get moving. So it was a blast. From kindergarten to 5th grade, I just saw great things in reviewing these materials, and it is well past time. We haven't purchased new science instructional materials for many, many years, over 12 for certain. So this team will talk you through the process, and just wanted to put a plug in twice. There is going to be opportunities for the materials to be viewed coming up this month. 2 different opportunities. They were, Caitlin, our new PR person, sent out the information that they were on view for 3 weeks, but the publisher did close that window down. They are reopening it for us so that we can do these 2 May showings too. We'll do those over at the Jefferson building and have the technology on so that parents, community can look through the product themselves.
What are the dates again that you'll have open?
May 10th and 24th.
Through 24th, or
May
just those
10th
2
and
days?
24th, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Dr. Bauer and Tara Knowlton.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Amanda Bauer, and I'm one of the teaching and learning specialists for Rapid City Area Schools, and I helped work through the process of the elementary science adoption. So just going to take you through a little bit of our journey that we've been on this school year. The first thing we would like to share with you is the purpose statement of our committee. This is what we launched every meeting with. It was kind of our guiding compass in selecting an instructional resource to meet the needs of our students in Rapid City area schools at the elementary science as it pertained to science instruction in particular. So first and foremost, looking for an instructional resource that aligned to our state standards. Also looking for a resource that would promote inquiry and critical thinking on the part of our students. And like Valerie said, just that instilled that enthusiasm and engagement for science learning in our classrooms as well. So where are we right now? We just concluded our pilot in the very early stages of April. We reached consensus by our committee members, and we'll talk through that a little bit further here in just a moment, in favor of adopting mystery science. Last week, we took that decision to instructional council, and they favorably viewed moving forward with that resource to be used in our K-5 classrooms. And now we are seeking approval from you all on May 17th. So our instructional resources that we piloted, both resources that the committee selected, we began with 9 altogether, and they began working through each of those resources and digging into them and seeing what was available in them. We ultimately narrowed that down to 2 resources from Discovery Education. The first one was Mystery Science, and that pilot ran from February 22nd through March 11th in K-5 classrooms that were committee members from our work that we had been engaging in, so all committee members had the opportunity to pilot in their classrooms. And then Science Tech Book was another resource that was piloted March 14th through April 1st in our 3rd through 5th grade classrooms. And the reason that resource was not piloted K-5 was because we reached a point in the process where we typically reach out to publishers and ask for an initial quote or bid for moving forward. And once we received that, there was a lot of collaboration with the publishers to see what we could do as far as the budget was concerned. And so Science Tech Book was slated to move forward for grades 3 through 5. We went back to our K2 teachers and took it to them and said, how do you feel about this? And they felt very strongly what Mystery Science could offer for them. So they said, let's move forward with that. Please check in with us after that pilot to see where we stand, and then we would change course if necessary. Our evaluation protocols, as we dug into those instructional resources, like I said, we first began with 9 altogether, and we vetted all of those through our first tool, which which were our non-negotiable criteria and standards. So we looked for things like three-dimensional learning and phenomenon-based instruction. That just goes back to good quality science instruction, not only for K-5 but K-12. We looked for usability, so a resource that would be flexible to our student needs but also our teacher needs based on staffing and their time allotted for science instruction on a daily or weekly basis in their classrooms. And then we looked at alignment and accuracy as it pertained to our South Dakota state standards. So Tool 1 helped us narrow it down to those two that we piloted. Throughout the pilot then, our teachers really looked into Tool 2, which were our overarching considerations, so digging further into what these resources had to offer. So we looked for integration in terms of how it integrated literacy and mathematics and speaking and listening into the science instruction realm. We also looked at technology and what was available as far as online tools and resources, also how it could potentially work with LMS systems that are used at the elementary, such as Google Classroom or Seesaw, and then accessibility as far as differentiation, text-to-speech availability and things, so what features were available for that, and then what assessment tools were available, both in terms of formative assessments and summative assessments for our students that would give us a good understanding of where students were in their science understandings. In addition, we sent out several surveys to different stakeholder party groups. We wanted as many voices to be part of this process as possible. So obviously we looked to our pilot teachers. They received a survey at the end of each pilot to reflect back on their experience. And then they also had a chance to debrief with other pilot teachers at our April committee meeting. We also sent out a survey and encouraged other staff members in each of the buildings, administrators, special education teachers, anyone in the buildings, to visit those pilot classrooms, see what that instruction looked like, and gather their own takeaways and offer feedback. We also collected feedback from our students, which you can imagine at K2 that can be a little bit difficult to get written feedback from them. So it was a very simple survey. Some of our teachers elected to do it whole class with their kindergarten, first and second grade students, but we still had their voice as part of that process. Our third through fifth grade students did an excellent job of really providing great narratives. I think if you were to read some of their feedback, you would be quite impressed with the language used to cite their excitement for these different resources that they had the chance to experience. So that was really fun for our committee members and us to review as part of this process. And then, as Valerie mentioned at the beginning as well, we also looked to parents and public to offer input too. We worked with the publishers to open that 2-week window with access to their materials. And as she mentioned, Caitlin pushed that out through email and social media to all of our families and public members to get their feedback as well. So we tried to pull in as many voices, and our committee members had the chance at our final meeting to look through all of that feedback, and that guided their decision-making process as well.
So as Dr. Bauer mentioned, our K2 teachers moved forward piloting only mystery science and asked us to reach back to them at the end of their initial 3-week pilot to kind of check in, see where we were. They unanimously agreed that mystery science would fit their needs at the K2 level. This is their survey results. During the pilot, the committee, it was brought up from the committee teachers, a proposal that kind of would lump third grade in with that K2 team and allow 4-5 to select a different resource than the third grade teachers, just based on the needs of the students and the teachers at that grade level band. At our April meeting that Amanda talked about, they decided that was, they would agree with that third grade could be then adopt mystery science, that it fit their needs as well with the K2 team. And they moved forward then with a 4th and 5th grade vote between mystery science and science textbook. So after some in-depth discussions, looking through all of the surveys that Amanda talked about, our Tool 1 and Tool 2 evaluations, aligning to the purpose statement, and just the discussions between the 4th and 5th grade team members. All the 4th and 5th grade teachers there unanimously agreed to move forward with adopting Mystery Science. So at that meeting, after that decision was made, there was a kind of a rationale for that decision, explaining the high points of Mystery Science, some of the concerns for implementation. The biggest concern for implementation was that it is an internet-based program. It's very visual, video-based, and they were concerned if the internet goes out, which is always a concern in schools these days. And then the implementation goals and expectations, just being excited that our science materials were getting updated and could be offered, and the excitement that students showed in the classroom on those pilot visits, and the discussions that we got to hear happening between students and their teachers. It was really kind of exciting. Before we open it up for questions, we brought Mr. Salazar from Meadowbrook and Mrs. Whitney from Grandview to kind of talk about their experience with the materials as well as their students.
All right, are there any questions from the board? Or did you have a presentation too? Go ahead.
I was just going to just speak on behalf of what I witnessed in the classroom.
Okay.
So I teach 4th grade at Meadowbrook, and my students have a deep love for science. It's something I make time for, or we do all the time, and they were really thrilled by the Mystery Science things. For example, last week we did pollination, and something they really didn't know a lot about, and flower parts, things like that. And we built a flower, and they made bees out of pipe cleaners, got to pollinate with like cinnamon or coffee, and they got to see how that process works. And at the end of my class every day, we sent out a message to our parents through our class dojo, what was your favorite part of the day? Everyone always says on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, it's always science. And especially that day, we got to learn how bees pollinate. We got to see it in action. It was one of their favorites, and that's the way it is every week with these materials. They're very easy to use, kid-friendly, teacher-friendly, very, very, very usable, very great materials.
I'll bet
you. I do love my science. It's one of my favorite things.
And I'm Casey Whitney. I teach kindergarten at Grandview Elementary School, and sometimes, you know, kindergarten, the younger ages, we were worried about the Mystery Science, but the kids, every single time that I went to teach it, were so excited about science, just as he was saying as well. They had a lot of the videos. I know sometimes you can be concerned, like, oh, they're just watching a video. These videos were very interactive for the kindergarten. Like, if we were learning about animals, like, they would get up and they would show them, like, how the animals eat, and they have to pretend to eat like these animals, or they're roaming around the room, different things, and it was very engaging for the students. It's not just sitting and watching a video, and after they watch the video, there's usually some sort of activity or something that they're doing that they're collaborating with each other. So they loved it. They're in groups, and like some of them, they had to, the one that Valerie Seals and the team came in to observe, we had like some yardsticks and something hanging down and some paper at the bottom, and they're trying to swing and knock something over. It was about forces and trying to figure out how much force, how far back they needed to go. And I mean, all of it they have absolutely loved. It was very hands-on and very interactive for them. And for usability for the teacher side, it is very usable, and a lot of the teachers in my building, when I said that we'd reached the consensus for Mystery Science, were very excited about that option. So, thank you.
Go ahead.
You couldn't have picked two better teachers to bring in front of us. Their enthusiasm for this topic is phenomenal. Thank you very much for bringing them to us.
Yes, of course. I will set up a schedule to go watch elementary science instruction next year, if anybody wants to join me.
You need to. That was awesome. Thank you, too, for, killing your evening with us, been wading through everything. But seriously, thank you for what you do for our students, and your enthusiasm is very catchy. It woke me up really well.
Any other questions from board members? Your comment that we might be concerned about the amount of TV or TV screen time is definitely a concern of mine. So I will be coming down to take a look at it, probably with Deb. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are on to other. Does any board member have other? I will just take this time to comment on what may be happening, well, will be happening next year. And one of the commenters earlier tonight spoke to it. She was a teacher that said about transparency, having the materials and the curriculum online would be a great thing for parents to see. I will tell you it will be there, but that we have gotten some pushback. So there are teachers that don't want that. So I just wanted that to be known, that it is going to be out there next year. So with no others, we are going to be going into executive session for South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-2.1, 1-25-2.3, and 1-25-2.4. And I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Jim and Deb. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right. There will be no further action afterwards, too. Want to, for now? I'll explain a couple of things. Or you can leave them here.